I'd first like to thank, on behalf of us all, Tim and Claire for such a wonderful lunch today. It's tremendous to be brought into such a setting. It's such a lovely setting, and also particularly amazing this year to be able to eat like this, not in a monsoon. Oxford University seethes with activities every day of every week, but sometimes, it's necessary to come a little way out of the city and just to assemble as we're doing today, just to appreciate Oxford's extraordinary breadth and depth, its scope and its ambition, because that's what we see here. In a way, every image we have of Oxford engraves on our imagination its historic roots as an English institution, one that stretches back over nearly 800 years. Every photograph is an image that defines the university by its sense of place, as first a medieval, then a Renaissance, and then an Enlightenment centre of European learning. In part, of course, that's absolutely true. Oxford can't be replicated anywhere else in the world. That's why the university has not set up campuses outside Oxford, overseas. One really needs to study here at Oxford to receive the benefits of what has always been a peculiarly personal sort of education. We know who our students are. But in another equally real sense, Oxford has never been a university restricted by national or cultural boundaries. The collections of the Bodleian or the Ashmolean show for how many centuries our curiosity has been global. And that's surely more true now than at any other time in our history. Every year, Oxford becomes more international. I think over 60% of our graduate students now come from outside Britain, as do 40% of our academic staff. A world-class centre of research and teaching in the 21st century has to be global in its reach or it's nothing. Now that, of course, can bring with it its complications. I can think of a Chinese undergraduate at St Anne's who's reading mathematics, who came to me to complain about the standard of the lectures because of the intense German accent of the professor. Indeed, I often look at the members of my governing body, 50 academics from 15 or more different countries, and I think of the subjects ranging across the humanities, the social sciences, the sciences, and I try to imagine what they were all like just as they were finishing primary school at 10 years old. What were they like? Where were they living? Could they ever have envisaged that for the many different paths that they were going to take that would bring them to this university to become friends and colleagues? And I think that is the great virtue of the network of scholarship that not only binds together the academic world, but is also, let's face it, so important in promoting reason and tolerance and mutual understanding in a globally connected world. And no relationship can be more important for Oxford than that with China. There are at present, I think, some 750 Chinese students, graduates and undergraduates studying here. The Chinese society, as any head of house will know, is one of the most vibrant and exciting societies in the university. Contemporary Chinese culture is an integral part of Oxford culture. And I would say, in particular, that the opportunity for our British students to get to know and to make friends with Chinese students is an essential part of their education and their preparation for their future. Our scholars here today are graduate students, and deeply distinguished ones. But I'd like to say a little first just about the undergraduates who I've come to know in my time at St Anne's, because I often feel that when I meet an 18-year-old in their first year at Oxford as an undergraduate, he or she has travelled already far further in their life than ever I'm going to do in mine. There's an optimism, there's a determination, and a self-reliance about our Chinese students, from which European students can learn a very great deal. An independence, matched only by a sense of responsibility to their parents and wider family, that have done so much to get them to come. There's also the case, I think, that those Chinese students who do best at Oxford are those who set out to integrate and mix with all the other students who are there in the university, to speak English well, and to enjoy the sheer diversity of the experience that they can have. And the more integrated they are, the better they do academically. In my college, I recognised one year that the Chinese students, Chinese New Year was going to be rather a sad time because they were going to be far away from their families and they were going to be lonely. So we talked about this, and I suggested they put on a Chinese New Year for the whole college, and it was a fantastic occasion. It brought everyone together and was a wonderful success. Equally remarkable is that range of talent and the determination of our graduate students. I remember meeting 2 graduate students in mathematics on the first evening of the academic year at a freshers' party in October. They were from Harbin. They had, in the past 48 hours, travelled for the first time in their life to Beijing, where they'd stayed for a few hours, on to Heathrow, poor people, then in a bus to Oxford, and there they were, 2 days after leaving home for the first time, standing in St Anne's, talking to me in excellent English about their research ambition for the years ahead. I can think of another who came to do a Master's in English Literature because he was fascinated in the nonsense poetry of Edward Lear. How he found Edward Lear, I do not know, but he gained his doctorate just last year. And I can think of another Master's student from northwest China who was deeply knowledgeable about minority languages in China. And he arrived in Oxford, believe it or not, to study for the Master's degree in Celtic Studies. That is to understand Welsh, Old Irish, and Old Scots, Gaelic. He already spoke French, German, and I think Russian. How he ended up in my college, I have no idea. He was a superb scholar. He got to know our Professor of Comparative Literature, who spoke Welsh, and is now continuing his scholarly career in the United States. But it's in the sciences that one sees most vividly the deeply impressive capacity of our Chinese graduate students. My college has had 12 students over the years who have only been in Oxford thanks to the generosity of the Chinese Oxford Scholarship Fund. And it was to my delight I saw 2 of them here when I arrived today. My college has a strong core of academics in materials science. And the head of department is a fellow of my college who told me that he has spent 120 days this year outside the United Kingdom, most of them in China, working on collaborations. And materials science as a department relies hugely on the talent and expertise of its doctoral students from China. And it's wonderful to see so many material scientists here today. Yet what is so noticeable about all you scholars here is your sheer range of academic disciplines. Not only materials and engineering, but earth scientists, chemists, environmental scientists, researchers in biomedical engineering, psychology, zoologists, computer sciences, students in financial economics, lawyers and historians. It's a cross-section of the knowledge the world needs to explore and to share if global cohesion is to be maintained in these chaotic years of the early 21st century. Last year, I was lucky enough to travel quite widely in China. I was making a documentary series for BBC Radio. I took with me most of the contents of the Oxford University shop in the High Street as presents for the people I'd meet, and they were very kind to me. And to the deep annoyance of my BBC producer, to say that I was from Oxford was a far more influential way of getting to see people than saying I was from the BBC. But wherever I went, in different provinces, in cities and in villages, amongst students on university campuses, and with people far away from the university, whenever I met a young person and explained where I was from, I received more or less the same reply, indeed the same phrase: Oxford is my dream. And I was, to tell you the truth, quite taken aback by this, and very moved by it, and by the power of Oxford's reputation, and Oxford's myth, and its name, and the idealism and the aspiration of these young people, who felt so deeply the transformative potential of education and the dream that Oxford represented. For them, sadly, Oxford would very probably only ever be a dream. But for the scholars who for the past 20 years have been the beneficiaries of this China-Oxford Scholarship Programme. It has been a dream that's been made real. And this has been to the immense benefit, not only of all those scholars, but to Oxford itself, which is a far more ambitious and interesting community because of their presence. And so on this occasion, above all, on this 20th anniversary, I think we should thank all those whose generosity and idealism has made it possible.